Greetings to each and every one. It's the radio guy, Dr. Mike Prince. Hopefully that everyone is enjoying their holiday season. We are fortunate to have on the line with us right now none other than the man himself, Shotgun Willie Simmons. How you doing, my man?
Man, I'm doing well, Mike. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you as well, my friend. I pray that all is well and you had a festival time for the kiddos during Christmas time.
Oh, it was great. Always great to spend time with family and loved ones.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So hopefully they got your wallet just a tad bit lighter, right?
A lot lighter.
A lot lighter. Well, look, man, since the last time you and I have had the opportunity to conversate, there's been a lot going on. We had the Celebration Bowl, we had signing day, and then there's a forecast of some potential change in the atmosphere for the conference. So I guess we'll go in reverse order. Give us your reflection on the Celebration Bowl and how you saw things, and what's the magical beam that the SWAC's going to need to be in their victor circle.
Well, I thought it was a great Celebration Bowl, a well-played football game on both sides. I thought, they showed why they were the two best teams in black college football. And that's hard for me to say, that we were right there in third place. But, again, I took my hat to Coach Oliver and the job his staff, did preparing for the game. And, Coach Prime and the daunting task of trying to juggle, accepting a new job, but also preparing to win a championship, But I thought the game was played out, really well. I thought both sides showed really great talent, great line play on both sides. The skilled guys really did a great job, and the quarterbacks played lights out football. So, again, it came down to the wire, and a play here, a play there, it's a different outcome. But, you can't say enough about the quality of the game, and I think that bodes well for the Celebration Bowl in itself, the MEAC and the SWAC. And as far as the SWAC finally getting over the hump, I think it's just a matter of, coming to play. And I thought Jackson did. I thought they came to play, but I thought Central, stood toe-to-toe, and they made the play that needed to be made. So last year's game was more of an anomaly, I believe, with Jackson and South Carolina State. But this year's game, I thought, was a true tale of the two best teams going toe-to-toe, head-to-head, and Central made this a few more plays, and that was the difference in the game.
Okay, now I'm going to touch on that just for a moment. I think part of the challenge that the SWAC has in being as effective as they could be, and before I do that, let me say this. Although the game went into overtime, from my vantage point, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it seemed to me that North Carolina Central had control of that game from start to finish.
I think Central did a great job of maintaining their momentum. I think they started fast, and maybe that caught Jackson off guard. But they started fast, and they were able to keep the momentum. Oftentimes in those type games, it's kind of ebb and flow. You kind of jump up, and then you have a little lull, and but Central was able to avoid that lull, and they played really solid football. They had a timeless fake punt that gave them momentum and led to a score. Had another couple of trick plays there. All of them worked, and that was a testament to their preparation. They do have an extra week or so of preparation time than the SWAC, and not going to use that as an excuse or anything telling. But we have time to walk through those type of trick plays and make sure that they're called when they're supposed to be. I thought that helped Central, and it kept Jackson always playing catch up. But with the quarterback that Jackson has or had, and the skilled guys, the offense is built to play catch up, and they were able to do so. They were able to throw the ball around, make some plays in the passing game, and keep them in the game. But I thought Central just did a great job of maximizing every opportunity that they had to stay in control of the game. And even with that, it still came down to, again, an overtime win with a huge drop pass by Jackson that would have obviously taken the game to a second overtime. But again, just, you can't say enough about the preparation that Coach Oliver and his staff did on getting those guys ready to play.
Yes, sir. Now, when we talk about the drop pass, and I know that's the one that stands in everyone's mind, once again, from my vantage point, I thought that Jackson may have gone for 2-point conversions more often than what they should have instead of taking the 1 point. And maybe that's the conservatism in me to feel that way. But I think that came back to bite them in the long run.
Well, again, been coaching this game for 17 plus years now. I've been a head coach now for 10. It's always second guess when it doesn't work, right? Had Jackson converted the extra point or the touchdown there late or whatever that was, and been able to go into another overtime and pull it out, then they made all the right calls, right? But when you come up short, you can always look back and say, well, hey, if they would have gone for 2 here or, made this different call there, and that's just a part of the game. So, you can always look back. And hindsight's always 20/20, especially in the game of football. And but I thought that, their staff did a good job of managing the game. And, they had been playing really great defense all year. They still have the nation's #1 defense, statistically. And so whenever you have a great defense, and, I'm afforded that luxury over the last couple of years because our defense has been, top 10 nationally both years. It allows you to play a little bit more conservative as opposed to having to always be the aggressor when you feel like you have a defense that can get you going. And Coach Prime said it after the game. He felt that even though they're giving up a bunch of yards to Central, that eventually your top-notch defense is going to stand up when it needs to. And that's why you play the game conservative, because you still want to put the game in the hands of your defense when it's been able to carry you all season.
Right. Well, that's some big words coming from a quarterback or an offensive-minded person, so I really appreciate that, sir. That you make that comment and make that acknowledgement of defense in the championship. So I'll move on from that. Now, you mentioned earlier about time, and I think that's something that goes a bit understated or diagnosed, that MEAC has way more time to prepare for those games. Percentage-wise, what difference do you think that makes when it comes to a game like this?
Well, it's difficult to say whether that extra week or two has a profound impact. You look at the record. I think is now 5-1 or 6-1.
6-1.
6-1. No, I do believe the first 5 years, I think the best team won. I think North Carolina A&T was unquestionably the best team in black college football over those years. With Tariq Cohen and the run that Broadway had during that time. The year Grambling beat Central, even though it was a 1-point game, 10-9, I thought Grambling had the best team that year. I think last year was the first time that the underdog won. South Carolina State beating Jackson and won in convincing fashion. I think there are reasons behind that. And then this year, same thing. Obviously Jackson was, I think, a 10-point favorite or something like that, against Central. And you look at those two games, again, not to make any excuses. You play the game, you have to prepare to play, and the best team on that day will win. But last year, I truly believe Jackson went into the game underestimating South Carolina State. You look at the fact that we had beaten South Carolina State handily. They lost to Alabama A&M. They lost to North Carolina A&T. So they had 3 black college losses. And Jackson going in undefeated in black college football, I think kind of underestimated South Carolina State. This year, again, you look at the distractions that the team had to face with, Coach Prime accepting the Colorado job the day of the SWAC championship game. And for the next 2 weeks, having to prepare, not knowing who's going to stay, who's going to leave. I understand that there are a couple of players who did not play in the game. And again, none of these are excuses. I mean, the team that shows up on game day has to play and has to win. And I thought Central did a better job of preparation, obviously, on that day. But again, I think it's just been a matter of the best team. 5 out of the 7 years, in my opinion, the best team won the game. And that just so happened, 4 of those years, it just happened to come out of the MEAC. So I don't think the SWAC championship game or the long layoffs, but sometimes long layoffs hurt you. You look at the college football playoff in the national championship games, when they have those long layoffs, sometimes it breaks your rhythm. So it takes you a while to get back in the swing of things or the flow of things. So I think it's give and take on both sides. But I truly believe the best team has won the game, 5 out of the 7 years.
Okay. Now, you made the reference that perhaps Jackson overlooked or underestimated South Carolina State last year. Do you put that on coaching or players?
I think it's both. I've said as a coach, we have the tough task of trying to mentally lock our guys in to be ready to play. But these are 18 to 23-year-old guys. They watch the film. Obviously they look at the records. They beat us by 1 point to start the season. They beat Alabama A&M handily during the regular season. And then obviously North Carolina A&T didn't have a banner year in 21. So you look at the fact that those were the 3 losses, and we beat South Carolina State in convincing fashion. I think those young men, just felt that they would be able to show up and win. And so we're always trying to make sure that mentally we have our guys locked into play. Whenever you play the Mississippi Valleys of the world, in this case, this year's Arkansas Pine Bluff, teams that don't have great records, most of the talk that week is about not overlooking your opponent. The quote unquote trap game. That's what we always got to prepare against, what people call the trap game. So most of it falls on the coaching staff, but there is a part that the young men play because they have to receive the message. And they have to understand that the way you respect the opponent is how you prepare for them. And we've seen that time and time again all throughout, football, where underdogs go in and beat, the favorite because of maybe that favorite overlooking or just not giving enough respect to the other team that's coming to town.
Okay. Now, it's no doubt deion, of course, has turned the page. He has moved on. A short stint in the SWAC, but no doubt an impactful impression on the conference. And from your experience level, although you have 17 years of coaching under your belt, what, if anything, did you learn from deion, and what impact do you feel that he has left on the conference and how you can move forward from here?
Well, one, I'll start with the impact. I feel he brought a lot of awareness to things that we've been saying for a long time. I can't say definitively that he said anything that we didn't know before. We've been, underfunded for years. We haven't gotten the national recognition, for years. The coaches, the players, the NFL scouts have not evaluated our guys as thoroughly, in my opinion, as they have other conferences. We have not given at the level that maybe we need to, in order for our programs to continue to elevate. So the things that he said publicly, again, were all things that we as coaches have been saying, fans have been saying, even players, behind closed doors have been saying for years. We just didn't have the reach, to allow them to that message to flow to the masses. And so we're thankful for that, that he was able to use his platform, use his profile and name recognition to address a lot of those issues. And hopefully they'll continue to be addressed, even with him transitioning on to a Power 5 school. And knowing Prime, he'll continue to share that message, maybe not as frequently, obviously, as he was able to every week at weekly SWAC calls and media days and those type of things. But what I know of him personally, he is passionate about, quote unquote leveling the playing field and giving these schools an opportunity, because at the end of the day, he did get his degree from an HBCU, and the HBCU did give him his first opportunity to be a head football coach, and you never forget that. I'm always indebted to Ashley Robinson because he gave me my first chance to be a head coach, and I know Prime feels the same way. Jackson State gave him his first chance to be a head football coach, and so yes, even though he's moved on to Boulder, Colorado, he still has a certain love and respect for the city of Jackson and for the SWAC, and I know he'll continue to try as much as he can to share that message. But hopefully we'll continue to push the envelope as coaches, as media personalities, as presidents and chancellors, administrations, and as a fan base, to continue to fight for equality in college football. But as far as what I learned from him, obviously Prime did it his way. Like it or love it, he did it his way. And, I think that's something that we can all take away, from his short time as a head coach at Jackson, is that just being authentic, being true to yourself, and if you lose, you're going to lose on your own terms. If you win, you're going to win on your own terms. Then when it's time to leave, you're going to do so on your own terms as well. And that's what he was able to show. And I know a lot of people feel a certain way about, the timing of his exit, but he did it on his terms. And I think not enough of the emphasis is placed on that. That this is a very fickle profession that we coach in. You saw the coach Hackett just yesterday, fired from the Broncos. Don't even know if he made it a full season. And yes, people say, well, he's going to get a big payday and buy out and all those things, but I don't think any coach takes a job with the idea that I can just get fired and make a lot of money. We all have egos, we all have pride, we all want to do a great job wherever we are. But the raw reality of it is that many coaches don't get to walk away on their own terms. Many of them are fired. And so he was able to do it on his own terms and do it the way he wanted to do it while he was there at Jackson. I think that's, not necessarily saying that's something I learned, because I've always tried to do things my way and the way I wanted to do them as a head coach. But I think he continued to reaffirm that, we just have to be true to ourselves, and I think the young people will respond to that.
Now, with that being said, do you believe that those that remain are being true to themselves? And sometimes we take the position that, well, I don't want to rock the boat, when sometimes the boat needs to be rocked, and in many cases the boat needs to be turned over, but for fear of what could happen, we just keep our mouths closed?
I think that can be said in many walks of life, particularly with the Black experience. A lot of inequalities, a lot of missed opportunities, a lot of things that we still face to this day can be said, can be stated, and oftentimes we do, don't get me wrong, but I still think that there are opportunities that we can sometimes speak up and use our voice, and sometimes maybe we don't feel that our voice is as powerful as it is, right? He Prime understood and knows how much reach he has, because he's always had it. But the same can be said about me, about Fred McNair, about Eric Dooley, Cornell Maynard, the other head coaches here in this conference. Maybe we don't have 100,000 followers on social media, but with the 10,000 we have, or the 20,000 we have, we can speak up, and not necessarily not just on social media, but during our weekly calls. And I think sometimes we're hesitant to say certain things because of the culture that we're in these days, and everything you say is scrutinized, and there are long-term ramifications about some of the things that we say, and even I was even kind of reprimanded one time by my mentor after kind of following up something that Prime said, and the point was made that, hey, he's got, I'm not going to use the term that was used, but a different type of money, quote unquote, than I have. And so with that celebrity comes, I think a certain, what's the term you're looking for, leeway to say certain things. But again, I think that we still, as head coaches in this conference, can carry the mantle, and even come together in maybe a way that we haven't in the last couple of years, because I know that he was so polarizing that you have a faction of coaches that just didn't care for him too much. But I think now that he's gone, that we can kind of come back together as a group of 12 head coaches whenever the school down the road from us, we don't say their names, but whenever they hire a coach, we can all kind of get together and put our heads together and figure out what we need to do to take this conference to the next level. Because I think we're around the cusp, but we can't slow down.
Right. So with all that being said, would you say that, I'll just put it this way, on a scale of 1 to 10, from his entering to the conference to his exit of the conference, if you had to measure the impact that he's had, what number would you give with 10 being great?
Wow, that's a tough question. It's a great question. And I think you can kind of break it down into different elements. He was successful. I mean, he didn't lose a conference game in the last 2 years. He signed the number 1 player in America, and Travis Hunter, something that, at least in our knowledge, in recent history, has never been done, in the SWAC of black college football. College game day, was in Jackson this year. Good Morning America was in Jackson the week before. Now they did come to FAMU the following week, So again, I think his popularity brought a lot of attention. So from that regard, it's pretty high. I can't give it a numerical value, but I mean it's up there. His impact was definitely felt in that regard, and we'd be, I think lying to ourselves if we didn't acknowledge that. Now, did he do things that's never been done? And I wouldn't say that. I think back to the run that Broderick Fobbs had at Grambling. I think between 2015 to 17. I don't think they lost a conference game in 3 years. He's had players, get drafted, go to the NFL. Terran Armstead is a Pro Bowler in the NFL now. Titus Howard was a first-round draft pick, a few years back with Alabama State. Isaiah Crowell, went to the NFL from Alabama State. Kadero Hodge and Quentin Bell, 2 guys I coached at Prairie View, are still enjoying great careers. I think Kadero's now his 5th year in the NFL. So, again, the things that he was able to do on the football field, I think they've been done, so his impact was more so on just the attention and, the brand awareness that he was able to provide. So when you look at it from those two, from on the field football perspective, I think he had a great run. Right? He had a great run, but it's not a revolutionary run, right? I mean, coaches Eddie Robinson, A.W. Mumford, Marino Castle. I mean, there's a long list of phenomenal coaches, amazing coaches, Hall of Fame coaches that have coached in the SWAC, that have had undefeated regular seasons and undefeated conference records. But the attention that was brought on the conference the last 2 years, I think, when it's all said and done, will be his greatest impact.
And that number is?
Well, from an awareness and attention standpoint, I mean, you got to give it a 8, 9, somewhere up in there. I mean, it's really high.
Okay.
And then, from a on the field performance, again, it's really good. Probably 7 or 8. But again, I don't think his legacy will be what he did on the field. I think when the historians, and he always talks about his story versus history. When the historians write about Coach Prime's chapter in the SWAC, I think that's what it will be about. It will be about the attention, the awareness, this brass, finesse of bringing, of saying things that need to be said, addressing things that need to be addressed, the improvements that he was able to make in Jackson in a short period of time, with the new facilities and, some of those things. And so, again, that's what I think is twofold. I think when you say what type of impact he had, if you're talking about just on the field, I think it was really good. But if you're talking about off the field, I think that was kind of revolutionary. We've never really seen that level of awareness and attention on the SWAC. I mean, there's nothing to turn the TV on and see, Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless talking about Jackson State, which ultimately means they were talking about the SWAC. So a lot of the attention was on Prime and on Jackson State. But again, when you look at it, Southern was able to get attention because of it when game day came down. We were able to benefit from it, opening up the season in the Orange Blossom Classic down there in Miami Gardens. And so every team that was able to benefit from the attention that Prime got, I think it was trickle-down effect. And I think overall the entire conference was branded in a different light. And I think you'll see the effects of that as we move forward, and even this year. So even with the amount of recruits that are still considering schools in the SWAC and even the MEAC, I think a lot of that has to do with not just Prime, but just the added attention that the conference got over the last 2 or 3 years.
Okay, very good. Now, with that, I'll say one other thing before we move to your recruits for this first round of signing. A lot of people forget that even though you're competitors, these coaching circles are like fraternities. You do communicate with each other. You do pull for each other when you're not competing against one another. How often do you guys compare and share notes, in particular when you go against a MEAC school or a non-conference opponent?
I think it depends. I think every school in the MEAC wants to beat the SWAC in the Celebration Bowl, and I'm sure every school in the SWAC wants to beat the teams in the MEAC. So last year, when I talked to Prime before the game, I didn't give them any tips or clues as to how to beat South Carolina State. The only thing that I mentioned to him was that, hey, Buddy Pugh's gonna have his team ready to play. They're gonna play hard. That's a sign of a Buddy Pugh coach football team, that those guys are gonna play extremely hard, and they're not gonna quit. It's just been kind of a staple of his teams over the last 20 years since he's been there. So each team gets the same film. We have open exchange. So any film we want to watch, we can watch. We can do any breakdowns that we want to do on the opposing team. So it's not so much as me calling another coach saying, hey, what plays worked. I can look at the film and see what plays worked. I can maybe get an idea of what he thought about personnel. Okay, this guy looks really good on film. What do you think about him in person? Or this guy didn't look, we look like we can attack this particular player. What did you guys think when you played them? So you kind of get an idea of that, of how physical the guys are. Because, film only shows you so much. It shows you, obviously, scheme and plays, but it doesn't always show you the feel of how physical that game really was. So that's really what we try to ask each other more than anything else. It's just a feel for the in-game experience. How physical is the other team? How fast is the other team? Are they as fast in person as they look on film? Are they as big, physical in person as they look on film? And are the players that we think are the key players, are they as good as advertised? And the guys that we feel we can exploit, are they exploitable? So again, I think that's what we're more focused on. But yeah, we do communicate a lot, but more so about just running programs and some of the challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis. We talk about that a lot more than we talk about X's and O's, believe it or not. Okay,
very good, very good. We're talking with Coach Willie Simmons of the FAMU Rattlers, coming off the 2022 season, number 3 program amongst HBCUs in the nation. Speaking of that, sir, what have you added to the cupboard with this this first round of signings for 2022?
Well, we thought it was a pretty successful class. We're not done. Obviously, we still have some spots that we'd like to fill. Hopefully, a couple more before the mid-year starts, but definitely going into February 1st, which is the later signing period. But we we lost 2 running backs to graduation, and we brought in 2 transfers. So Kelvin Dean Jr. Is a local guy. Played his high school ball here in Tallahassee and signed with FAU, Florida Atlantic, coming out of high school. Spent the last 3 seasons down there. We also brought in another local guy, Jaquez Yant, who played here in Tallahassee as well, but went on to play the last 3 seasons over at Nebraska. And, Jaquez is a huge back, 6'2", 240-pound guy. He'll remind a lot of Rattler fans of, Jalen McLeod, but even more put together than Jalen, same weight, but, he's more rocked up. So excited about bringing him in. Dean is kind of more your slasher, so we think he'll bring some dynamic playmaking out of the backfield, being able to make guys miss in space. We did sign one high school running back / wide out in the mid-year, Levante Somerset out of North Fort Myers, a guy that turned down a lot of mid-major offers and was our first commitment this past summer, and he stayed true to us the entire time. And so we're excited that we were able to hold on to him after being courted by some quote-unquote bigger programs. At wide receiver, we were able to bring another Florida guy, Jamari Gassett, who started his college career at the University of Buffalo and had about 30-some catches there this year, averaged almost 18 yards per catch. So he's a speed guy. Obviously we're replacing the nation's best, black college receiver, one of the best receivers in the country, Xavier Smith. So again, just trying to find a way to recover some of that production that he's had over the last, 4 or 5 years with us. And we think Jamari will give us some of that. Very similar in size, 5'10", 175, but he's a speed guy. We feel like he can take the top off the coverage. Up front, always trying to build your depth up front. So we were able to get a huge steal. Ashton Grable was a young man that played recently at Jacksonville State, was committed to North Carolina A&T, but we were able to flip him, in the 11th hour. And so we're really excited about Ashton. We think he can play, all across the board, possibly all 5 positions. And we're really excited about him being a 6'4", 315-pound guy. Obviously, the championship game showed that it's going to be one in the trenches, and we definitely want to improve our productivity on the offensive line. Defensively, we were able to sign 2 defensive ends, one being a transfer, the other one being a junior, both transfers, one 4-year, one junior college. Sharif C. Is a transfer defensive end from Southeast Louisiana. He's a Houston native. Spent the last 3 years there. 6'4", 250-pound defensive end. Obviously, we're replacing Isaiah Land, who's arguably the nation's best pass rusher, and so we definitely want to improve on the defensive front. And then also Tyrese Gibson Battle is a defensive end, another 6'5" defensive end from Garden City Community College. And so we're able to dip into the junior college ranks and get a pass rusher that we think can come in and wreak havoc on quarterbacks. In the secondary, defensive secondary, we signed 3 guys. Jalen Glaze is another local product, Tallahassee product, played his high school ball right here at Lincoln High School and spent the last 3 years at the University of Minnesota. And so Jalen will come back, home as a 3-star guy, just like most of these guys were coming out of high school, 3-star recruits. Deco Wilson, Decorian Wilson is a safety transfer from Jacksonville State. We're able to get him, and we think he's going to come in and provide a lot of, well, not necessarily depth, but compete for a starting job right away. And then Amari Lee is a young man from North Miami who started his career at the University of Central Florida, and we were able to bring him in. And then we always want to have a huge emphasis on special teams, losing both first-team kicker and punter, and Chris Padul and Jose Romo Martinez. So we were able to sign Trey Wilhoit, which is another local guy. We were really lucky to get 4 guys that are from Tallahassee who went off to play college ball elsewhere. And Trey Wilhoit was at Eastern Illinois, actually finished 6th in the nation in punting this year, and actually higher than Chris Padul, who's a first-team all-conference punter. So very excited to get Trey here, and all these guys will be here, starting in January, all with the exception of Bo Somerset, a high school signee. So excited to get those 9 guys in the fold. We still have a few more guys that we're, again, courting, and hopefully once we have some official visits at the start of the new year, we can lock a couple of those guys in too. But we really feel like we increased our depth and playmaking ability, at a lot of positions.
Well, look, when you bring this up, the landscape of recruiting has changed dynamically. Of course, with the portal and with the NIL. Are you still trying to understand the both of those, or how do you mix and match? And I know a lot of people put the emphasis that you referred to looking at these championship games, that these games are going to be won in the trenches on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. What is the NIL value of an average lineman, and how do you fit that to your advantage?
Well, NIL is still something that we're all kind of figuring out, and I think that's at every level. That's at the FCS level, that's at the mid-major level, that's even at the Power 5 level, because the thing about NIL is that it's not run through the school. The athletic department, the university, none of us have a hand in NIL. It's all third party. So whether that be corporations or whether that be a collective, that's this is basically a pool of money that's put together by a group of individuals, maybe an alum, maybe outside donors. We're still trying to figure that space out. At our level, we don't deal with it as much. We do have guys with NIL deals, but believe it or not, a lot of our guys that have NILs are it's about their social media presence, and that's why we're so big on them about cleaning up the social media, making sure that they're saying and doing the right things, because it's advertising, right? These dollars are flowed through advertising, and so this is not a pay for play. And I think that's where a lot of people are still confused. This isn't like Michael Prince is going to come play at FAMU and we can just give you X number of dollars just come play at FAM. No, there's something that you have to do on your part. So whether that's shooting a commercial, whether that's an appearance or appearances, to do signage or whatever the case may be, you're getting paid for the service that you provide, right? And you're able to use your name to do that. But it's important to also understand that it's only your name. You cannot use anything related to the school or anything related to your ability to play the game. And so, Willie Simmons can't go and sign autographs with a FAMU jersey on to make money. You can't shoot a commercial, with our colors or our logo or on our stadium. Like nothing that you do NIL can be affiliated or related back to the university. And so it's all just your name, your image, and your likeness. And so I think that's where a lot of people maybe don't understand and think that you could just, because you're going to go play for X school, that they can use that to their advantage. So most of the NIL money, believe it or not, is people that have huge social media followings. Now, you do have some of the big ones. Obviously the top players in America are going to receive some of the big NILs. But when you do a true NIL breakdown, you have a lot of the non-revenue sports, a lot of female athletes even, that are making a lot more money than football and basketball players just because they have, huge social media followings because they're on TikTok doing dances or they're, they have a podcast, whatever the case may be. So I think that's how we're learning more and more about it. But there are some amazing opportunities out there for student athletes to really capitalize on their name, image, or their likeness.
It's crazy. You'll look at the kid's name, position, ranking, and then there's a dollar sign amount with an NIL projected value. And I'm just going like, wow, how do you come up with these numbers? And it's just amazing how time has changed.
Well, I think when you see those, that's where the collectives come into play. And I think that's where you have the quote-unquote have and have-nots. So, the Power 5 schools with the donors with the deep pockets, they can do these collectives. So, again, you get a lot of individuals that just pool money together through a foundation or nonprofit or whatever the case may be, and then they use that as the inducements for NIL. And so, when they say that this school, X school, I'm not calling the names because I don't want to be the subject of any type of criticism, but when they say,
hey, you got enough to worry about, man.
Right. When they say X school paid, X number of dollars for this player, That's really what they're saying. It's the collective that their alumni base has put together, that they've decided that this will be used to attract, prospective student athletes. And so if, FAMU or any other school within the conference is able to put together, say, $100,000 in a collective, and they say, all right, we're going to give 10 players $10,000, well, then that gives us the ability to go out and sign prospective student athletes with the understanding that they're going to get 10 grand. And based on whatever the stipulation of that collective is. And so I think that's what most people think about when they talk about NIL, but that's not the vast majority of what NILs are. The vast majority of NIL are student athletes, male and female, that are going out getting endorsements with, food companies, apparel companies, technology companies, because of their social media following. And that's the most of them. But there are, the big boys, so to speak, do have the ability to put those collectives together and be able to go out and, entice prospective student athletes, the top players in the country. But most of us, I don't know if anyone in the SWAC or MEAC or FCS or even many mid-majors are able to participate in that, because, again, we're all still trying to get money for our programs, to be able to function and operate. So the donor who's going to give $25,000 towards FAMU's program, do we really want to have him or him or her take that $25,000 and put it towards a collective for NIL, or do we want to put it towards trying to upgrade our facilities to make sure that we have the technology that we need to make sure that all of our student athletes, football players, can thrive, not just one, because the collective, that goes to just a handful of people. But we're trying to make sure that we can, continue to uplift our entire brand. And I think that's where, when they say the have and have-nots, I think that's where you see the biggest difference, because those Power 5 schools that are getting the TV revenue, $30, $40, $50 million a year, not saying they don't need the booster as much as but they don't need them as much as we do. That booster now can take their contribution and either split it up and give half to the athletic department and the other half to NIL, or however they choose. But for ours, most of ours needs to go back to the program, because that's how we all operate. That's how we continue to travel first class, feed our student athletes first class, dress them first class. And if we start taking that money and putting it towards NILs, and I think you're going to see the ones who aren't getting the NILs, maybe suffer a little bit more than they should.
Once again, we're talking with Shotgun Willie Simmons of the FAMU Rattlers, and just getting a little clarity on the ins and the outs on and off the field when it comes in particular to the Southwestern Athletic Conference. Now, what prompted me to schedule this interview with you is where we're leading to right now. And what I love about having you on, brother, we can agree to disagree and still get along. We don't take it personal. And you have a very different viewpoint as far as how the SWAC is structured right now. And I want to give you an opportunity to explain to our listeners on your rationale of possibly doing away with divisional play when it comes to football in particular.
Right. So obviously, right now, the Southwestern Athletic Conference is unique in the aspect that we're the only FCS conference to have a conference championship game. Every other conference determines a champion based off the regular season records. And you'll see co-champions, sometimes even 3-4-way champions, a 5-way even one time in the MEAC, I believe, some years back. But so because we do have a championship game, and that game determines who represents the conference in the Celebration Bowl, I'm just kind of under the train of thought that the Big 12 is adopting, the ACC is adopting, and even some of the other conferences are adopting that have championship games, is that you take the teams with the two best records, and not necessarily the divisional winner. If you're going to have a championship game, then to me, you're saying you want the best team to have a chance to play. And if you are saying that, then I think it should be the two teams with the best records. And so the last few years, FAMU in particular, and I guess you can say it's biased because we've been on the outside looking in. The last 2 years, we've sat there with one conference loss to the team that has not lost, which has been Jackson State. And we played that game in the first game of the season. And the winner of the West Division has gone into the championship game with at least 3 losses. And this year's case, lost to us. And so just, again, nothing's been done, nothing's been set in stone. But I do see other conferences, particularly FBS conferences, that have championship game structures, not going away from divisions. They still have divisions, but they're going away from the idea that the divisional champ plays in the championship game, and the two teams at the end of the season with the best records play in the championship game, which I think would I guess serve the conference better with giving the best team a chance to go to the Celebration Bowl, and it hadn't happened yet. Every year, the team with the best record has won the SWAC championship game when you interdivisionally, but there have been some instances where it's been close, and the team with 3, possibly 4 losses would be going to represent the SWAC in the Celebration Bowl over a team that has 1 loss.
Okay, now when you say that, those that are listening right now, they say, "Oh man, Simmons, you just crying because you couldn't get over the hump against JSU." What's your response to that?
Well, no, I definitely understand that sentiment, but again, I think any team that looks up and sees a championship game played and they're the number 2 ranked team, I think any team will have a problem with that. And I think any true fan will have a problem with that, because I think if you're a fan of SWAC football, which anyone who's listening to this call probably is, when you're looking at a championship game, who would you rather see? I would think that teams would rather see the 2 best teams go head-to-head for a championship, or a chance to play for a championship. And so, again, it just so happens that we've been in that situation the last 2 years, but any year that's happened in the past. I've been, I guess, unfortunate for me, I've been on the outside looking in, I think 4 times at this point. In 2015, my first year at Prairie View, is the same scenario. We lost to Grambling, and that was our only loss. And Grambling, I think, played Alcorn in the championship game that year. I think Alcorn had 2 conference losses. When I was at Alcorn, we lost to Alabama State. I think we lost to both Alabama State and Alabama A&M. But we still had the second best record in the conference. And I think the Western Division team had 3 losses or something like that, whatever it was. But I just, again, it's not just because I've experienced it, but I think it's just as a fan, when I think championship, I think 2 best, right? And now if you're doing a tournament style, then that's different. You put as many teams as you can in there, and then it's, if a team upsets another team, then hey, that's just the nature of it, right? You have to play, you have to win the games that you play in a tournament. So I understand baseball, basketball, other sports, they have a tournament. So there are multiple teams that get to go, and then they seed them. So the number 1 team plays the number 8 team, or whatever the case may be, however many teams are seeded. But in football, there's no tournament. It's just a sudden death, winner takes all settings or setup. And so because of that, I think they should just take the 2 best teams. Now, if you want to do a tournament, that's different. And you put the top 4 teams in and seed them, like the college football playoff. They took 4 teams, they seeded them, and then made the best man win. But if you're going to do a true championship at any level where it's just 1 game, most of the time it's going to be number 1 versus number 2. And I think that's just what there's something to consider. And again, not just trying to be different, but if you look at major college football, the FBS, they are the conference, the division that does championship games. The Big 12 and the ACC have already gone to that format, And I think it's only a matter of time before the other conferences, follow suit.
Okay, now with that being said, to respond to the best two teams, some that are listening right now, including yours truly, will say we already have the best two teams, the best team from the East and the best team from the West, regardless of what the records are saying. But because of the winner-take-all mentality and the opportunities that lie before you, you execute when presented the opportunity to execute. And if you, quote-unquote, fumble the ball, then no one to blame but yourself. How do you respond to that?
I just simply put it in layman's terms. So, and again, I'll use a real life application, right? This year, okay, FAMU opened the season against Jackson State, which is the same thing we've done the last year, and we'll do it again this coming year. FAMU lost. After that, Jackson State went undefeated in conference play, 9-0, or 8-0, however many conference, 8-0, and FAM went 7-1. One of those wins was against Southern University. Southern, because they're in the West, got to play in the championship game. So Southern lost to Jackson State, as did FAMU, but Southern also lost to FAMU. And so the purists who say divisions matter, well, FAMU gets penalized for losing in their division to a team that did not lose another game, but the team in the other division gets rewarded even though they lost to two teams in the other division. So what's the quote-unquote fairness or rationale in a situation where you can lose games to other teams in the division? You're in the same conference. So it's not like we're talking about different conferences. We're all in the same conference. We're doing divisions for all intents and purposes for logistics, right? You don't want teams having to travel a lot across the landscape of an entire conference, right? You have a team in Daytona, you have teams in Arkansas and in Texas. So you don't want to just do a random scheduling where, that team down there in Daytona had to go to theoretically Pine Bluff, Grambling, Louisiana, and Houston all in the same year. Like that would just kill their budget. That's why we left the MEAC to come to the SWAC, because the schools are a lot closer. And so because we have 12 teams, we're able to split it down the middle, and we're able to play the teams that are geographically closer to us. And we do have our crossover games every year. And so I think divisions are great for that purpose, to help our budgets and to save, to keep schools from having to travel a bunch. But when it comes to the fairness of a quote-unquote championship, to me, the divisions aren't the most important thing. The records are the most important thing in that regard, because you're saying, again, I'm talking about a championship game versus a tournament. If you're going to have a championship game format, which we do, then to me the championship should be the two best teams having a chance to go head-to-head to play. Now, if you don't want a championship game, then just the team that has the best regular season record, they go, regardless of division, regardless of whatever you look at. It's just the team with the best record goes. But since we like the idea of a championship game, which we've done that for over 20 plus years now in the SWAC, if you're going to have one, to me it just makes more sense that the two best teams go, because again, we're talking about trying to win the Celebration Bowl too. So do we really think the idea of a team that's lost maybe 3 games in conference during the regular season has the best chance to go and beat a team coming out of the MEAC who maybe didn't lose in conference? I just think you have a better chance of winning the Celebration Bowl if you allow the best team to go. And if Jackson and FAMU has a do-over and 2 years in a row and they play, even though the FAMU have to travel to Jackson, and we go to Jackson and we beat Jackson in Jackson to claim conference champion, then I don't think anybody will question who the best team was. The last, in 2021, there was a lot of, talk about who the number one team in black college football was. Was it South Carolina State, who lost 3 games in black college? Was it Jackson State, who went undefeated until the championship game and lost in convincing fashion? Or was it FAMU, who lost the first game of the season by 1 point and beat everybody else convincingly? So, again, when you have that type of situation, I think that's where you leave it up for discussion, as opposed to saying, hey, play on the field, and whoever wins on the field, they get to walk away saying they're the best. And so if the two best teams play in the SWAC championship game. Whoever wins that game gets to walk off that field that day saying they're the best team in the conference, and then they're going to the Celebration Bowl to play for a Black College National Championship, as opposed to, again, a team that's, lost 3 games in the regular season, and because they're just the best team in that division, having a chance to, to represent the conference. I don't know if that's, I don't know what the word, I don't want to say best or fair or whatever. I'm just stating my opinion, and that's, I'm just a football coach, so nobody has to listen to me anyway. But I just believe in a true championship setup that you should have a chance to take the 2 best teams.
Okay, now in response to that, there are 2 things I want to try and address, and the first thing would be, I agree to disagree that even though the Southwestern Athletic Conference is the conference itself, the divisions serve a twofold from my vantage point. They do serve as a division, and they also serve as a conference. Because if we took the approach that you're saying right now, even though we have, and I'm going to use the NFL as a model, you have the NFC and the AFC. You could say, as we speak right now, at the time of this interview, that the way things are shaped up, Philadelphia and San Francisco should play in the Super Bowl.
Well, now go back to what I said in the beginning. If the NFL decided to just do it 1 championship game, then that would be the case. It would be the 2 best teams. But because they have a tournament, which is a playoff, because of that, then you do get credit for winning your division. Baseball, basketball, volleyball, all the other sports that have postseason tournaments, they seed teams based off their records. They don't seed them based off their division. So the number 1 team in the conference is going to have the number 1 seed, and they're going to play whether they get a bye or not. Some of them get byes, but the way they seed it, you get credit for being the best regular season team in the conference. And then they seed everybody else based off their records. They don't seed them based off divisions. Notice that they seed them based off their records. So you may theoretically have the number 1 team in the East playing the number 8 team in the West, or they could play the number 8 team in the East. And once they get through that tournament, then whoever wins out of that tournament, that's who goes. So the NFL, much in that same fashion, you will get credit for winning your division. There are 2 conferences, but there are 4 divisions within each conference. And so each divisional winner will get an automatic playoff berth. They do get credit for that.
Now, hit the pause button right there. Going back to the SWAC now. Based on what you just explained, don't we have a sudden death, quote-unquote, playoff championship tournament?
In football?
Yes.
It's a championship
right now. No.
It's a
Technically, it's a championship game with the winner advancing to the championship of the HBCU, right, against the MEAC champion. Correct?
Yeah, but it's not a tournament. That's
No. I said it's a sudden death tournament. In retrospect, to expound on what you're explaining, we do have a tournament that's not maybe identified as a tournament with the structure, the current structure of the Southwestern Athletic Conference, with the divisions, and you play everybody within your division for regional travel convenience. Because if we're going to keep it that way for the regional travel convenience, then we can't have our cake and eat it too. If we want to go that model that you're speaking of, then everybody's going to have to play everybody, right?
Well, I don't agree with that because, again, you only play an 8-game conference schedule. So we have 12 teams within the conference. So there's no way theoretically that each team can play each other. So there are going to be years where the SWAC championship game will be a repeat game. That may very well be the case because there's a good chance that you will play somebody within the other division, right? For us, now there's a revolving door with everyone else except us and then Southern, Jackson, and Alcorn, right? We play Southern every year in the divisional. Alcorn plays Jackson every year, right? So every other team within the conference is on a rotating basis within the divisions. So you'll play everybody in your division, and then you'll play 3 teams from the other division. So because of that, you're always going to run the risk that there's going to be a repeat game. So I don't think you base it off of there's never equity or fairness in saying, well, so-and-so didn't play so-and-so or this and the third. Like, to me, that's where that only comes into play when you start talking about, to the way we do it now, I think that has more weight because, again, you look at it, if, say, this past year, Prairie View didn't have to play Jackson nor FAMU, right? The 2 best teams in the East, Prairie View didn't have to play them. So if they had run the gamut.
Okay, once again, and I'm just talking while it's fresh on my mind. They didn't have to play because you already got a predestined 3 games with the Western opponents, or the Western Division opponents. That's Grambling, Southern, and Alcorn. So there's going to be some times where they don't come to cross paths. Now, we can fix that if you remove those quote-unquote gate games for those said programs for the fairness that you were mentioning earlier.
Well, again, in a perfect world, you played 11 games and they'd be all conference, right? In a perfect world, but but no one does.
That? Well, how about this? If we went with that scenario that you're speaking of, because we do agree that the SWAC championship game has been a proven success for the SWAC. Would you agree with that?
I agree.
Okay. Now, we could fix that, brother. We got 12 teams, and I know this might sound far-fetched, but it could work. You could just play everybody within your division/conference, home and home, and you play one money game to determine who plays for the SWAC championship.
Well, I mean, theoretically that could work, but again, the way the college football governing, the way it's structured, the COVID year was the only year that teams were allowed to play twice. And the Southwestern Conference did that because of just scheduling conflicts. They weren't able to secure enough games outside the conference, so each team played each other twice in home and home. But that doesn't exist in any other form of college football. So because there's so many teams.
Pause again. And I want you to repeat what you just said. That doesn't exist in other football, right?
Right. Again, across college football,
okay.
no other conference does that.
Right. So the SWAC championship is the only conference that has a championship game on the FCS level, right?
Yeah, the SWAC is the only conference that does the championship.
So then we've already established that we can be as creative and unique as we need to be that's going to fit and work for our prospective conference, correct?
Well, if that was the model that the commissioner chose to take and the chancellor chose to take, but again, what that would do is that would eliminate a lot. That would only give each team one out-of-conference game. And so,
one out-of-conference game, and usually the one out-of-conference game that matters most for our programs is what we call our money game, right? And because let's be honest, in most cases when we do our home and home games, we're not really making a whole lot of money off of those games, and we're damn sure not making a lot of money off our Division 2, 3 NAIA opponents, right? So why waste those games and put those games to true value of determining a true representation for the Southwestern Athletic Conference?
No, I mean, theoretically, it makes perfect sense. If you to play a 10-game conference schedule and you play your division twice, home and home, and then play one out-of-conference game, and then have a true championship to decide. No, I mean, that makes sense as well. Like I said, don't know if that would pass. I don't know the bylaws, the NCAA bylaws, and how that would work. But again, they regularly make sense. But in the current form, without having to change the go check bylaws,
but you wouldn't change bylaws if you change it the way you're speaking of.
No, you wouldn't. I mean, that would be a bylaw that would be an easy pass, though. To just say, okay, 2 best teams play for a championship, that's not much to change. You don't have to change scheduling, because again, mind you, schedules are done years in advance. So to do what you propose, that wouldn't take effect until probably 2027, because everyone's scheduled out for the next 3 or 4 years.
Right.
We could do like the Big 12 went to that format this year. They just did it this past year. The ACC is they skipped a year, but they'll go to that format this coming year. And so again, the Big 12 decided it right away that, hey, this is best for our conference. Now I don't think they do divisions anymore, because at that level travel doesn't matter as much. But I think they just went to a 2 best record format, and then the ACC. I'm not sure if they're going to do away with divisions either. But I do know that they'll go to a best record format. So, again, it's the trend that college football is going, and again, I understand why, and that's all I'm saying.
No, I'm hearing you loud and clear. Well, I told you had your gloves on today, right? I did tell you. Yeah. Okay. So, and this is not kicking on. I love having these logical, what I consider rational conversations with you, because people can learn, we can learn from. Okay? The other potential solution to the current situation would be, we know that the NCAA is talking about possibly getting rid of what I consider ridiculous anyway, week 0, right? If we were to take on that format, once again, we could structure a playoff format or a tournament format where the number 1 and 2 seeds from each division/conference play each other. The number 1 plays number 2 from the opposite divisions, and the winners then play for the championship game. Is that a potential scenario that can work?
Well, I think if you're going to do that, then yes. Then you do, because now you're seeding. Because like I said, when you have multiple games, now you're in a quote-unquote tournament style, then yes, you do get credit for winning your division if you're going to go into a tournament. So they will get the number 1 seed. Whoever the Western Division champion will get a number 1 seed. The Eastern Division champion will get a number 1 seed. And then the 2 teams from the East will play the 1 team from the West, and vice versa. So in that scenario, yes, it makes perfect sense. In a home and home, like basketball, it makes perfect sense. Again, so to change the format, yes, those 2 scenarios make perfect sense. But again, my whole point was in the current format, what makes perfect sense to me is that the 2 best teams play. But I know I definitely get what you're saying. And if you were going to change
I like how you slid that in. What makes perfect sense to me is that the 2 best teams.
But no, it makes sense, because that's what other sports do. So again, basketball, baseball, volleyball, all of those, that's what they do, right? They take the winners of their divisions and they get number 1 seeds, and then they just seed everybody else, and then they pair them based on those seedings. I understand that totally, and that's not a new concept. That's just football just doesn't do it because we don't play as many games as other sports. But again, that's what your theoretically saying is that if football was to go to that format, that's what they would do, and that makes sense. But again, that would require some changes within the scheduling, the number of games you play in the regular season, all those things. So again, a lot goes into making football be similar to the sports that do have true tournaments after their regular season is over with.
Yes, sir. And I do believe that if we went either one of those routes, with the uniqueness of the Southwestern Athletic Conference, either one of them would be successful, I believe.
No, I think anything the conference does as a whole would be successful. Obviously, you're going to get blowback from traditionalists. Because again, if we go to the format of 2 best teams, they're going to be blowback from those purists from, the from both conferences, because the idea that a Southern or a Grambling, nor people would potentially not be able to play for a championship game if they don't have the best record. I mean, there are a lot of people that wouldn't like that idea, But and again, because I'm doing this interview, they probably blame FAMU again, like they do everything else. Oh, FAM comes to the conference, changes stuff, because that's what we get.
Well,
things were going great. Things were going great. Things were going great until they added them at school. Then they started changing stuff.
In all fairness, FAM put themselves on probation, and then they want to declare themselves the champion. With you had
let me correct you on that. Just like I have to do Jay Walker. FAM never self-proclaimed anything. There's a media outlet that named FAMU national champions. So because a media outlet does it, it makes it official. So because again, for everyone who wants to throw darts at FAM saying we self-proclaim, before the college football playoff, how was the national champion in FBS football determined?
On the field.
No, it wasn't.
I'm sorry. Coaches polls and AP polls.
It's right. It was voted on, right? Years where there have been split national champions. The coaches poll had one champion. The AP poll had a champion, right? That's factual, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right,
mm-hmm.
because it was based on votes. So in 2021, there are 3 governing bodies that vote for national champions. You have the AP, you have I think Bob Sterow, and then you have ESPN, the ESPN poll. AP poll had, I think, South Carolina State as a champion. I want to say the Bob Sterow poll, I believe, had Jackson State because they still had a 12-1, whatever their record was that year. ESPN did their final power rankings, and guess who was number 1 in the final power rankings after the season? The Florida A&M Rattlers. So based on ESPN.com, who's a major governing body, FAMU was national champions in their eyes. So we're not self-proclaiming anything. We're taking the rankings that were published after the season was concluded. And ESPN felt that after the season had been played, that Florida A&M was the best football team. So because of that, we said champion. So we don't. So again, for all those who say that FAMU is self-proclaiming, no, we don't self-proclaim anything. We are simply stating what ESPN.com published. Now, if anyone has a problem with ESPN, then they can take that over ESPN. But stop throwing darts at FAMU saying that we're self-proclaiming. Right. We don't self-proclaim to be the number 1 public HBCU. U.S. News and World Report says that we're the number 1 public HBCU. So all we're doing is just telling people what the masses say, right? What the publications say. We're just putting it on our website. That doesn't mean self-proclaiming.
Let me ask you this: if ESPN or the National Publication said that FAMU was the worst program in the nation, would you put that on your website?
We wouldn't put it, no, because nobody's gonna say no, say they're the worst. But
I'm just saying.
But if they voted that though, we couldn't deny it if they did the power rankings.
You could deny it because of vote.
No,
because those are popularities, man.
Okay, so now you say you can deny a vote. Now you sound like somebody. I'm not gonna tell you who you sound like. You sound like somebody who said votes don't matter.
No, I didn't say call me Trump. Man.
I said somebody.
Oh my goodness. No. That's why I love talking to you, because you tried to ruffle my feathers just then. But what in all seriousness now, let's be honest. Polls have always been disputable because they're based on popularity and who lobbies the hardest. And people can say they don't lobby, but everybody's going to lobby and troll to get their team here, and deservedly so, okay, especially if that's the format of choice. The question I want to ask you, this is a simple yes or no. Does the best team always have the best record?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we agree on that. Because although for the past 2 years, the best record, for whatever reason, couldn't get over that hump when they were the favorites in both games, but they lost to teams who, on paper, they should have had no problem of beating. Do you agree?
Well, I agree to a certain extent, because I guess the question that when you say best record, now we're talking about conference record, overall record, because again, you look at scheduling, that plays a lot into it. There are teams who play multiple, FBS teams or whatever. Jacksonville didn't play any FBS teams. So their undefeated season, yes, it's documented and it's a great accomplishment. But the fact that, North Carolina Central, which they did lose in the FCS game, so you can't really compare it. But the year that A&T went undefeated, they beat an FBS opponent. So it's, again, nothing.
So if I'm hearing you, are you putting an asterisk by Jackson State?
No. I'm not putting an asterisk by it. I'm just saying when you say does the best record mean that you're the best team? Not always, right? Now, oftentimes it does, but in a scenario where a team, say if we play next season, we schedule 2 NAIA teams and beat them, do we really get to run around saying that we're undefeated if we beat NAIA teams? And again, this isn't an indictment on any other team. I'm just using it as an example. So the question is, does the best team always have the best record? Not necessarily. Most of the time they do. But again, you look at the last 2 football seasons, and that's where I do think that there's going to always be controversy and that's why I think polls do matter, because in 2021, who's the best team, right? Is South Carolina State the undisputed best team in black college football in 2021 when they lost 3 games to teams within black college, 1 to us in convincing fashion, another to Alabama A&M, who we also beat, and then 1 to North Carolina A&T, who we didn't play.
Let's see, once again, I'm going to have to challenge you, bro, because you said that more than one time about beating North Carolina Central in convincing fashion.
South Carolina State.
I'm South Carolina State. I'm sorry. The same could be said that Jackson State beat you in convincing fashion.
No, this year, yes, it did.
Yeah, right. So why should you even be considered to be in the mix?
This year there was no talk of FAMU claiming anything. Like we take our number 3 ranking, and we're proud of that number 3 ranking. I can say without a shadow of a doubt, in my opinion, we're the 3rd best team in black college football this year. We had our chance against Jackson, and we laid an egg. We didn't play Central, but judged on how they're playing and the fact that they, beat Jackson the way they did. No, you have to give them their flowers. I mean, they have proven that they're the best team, right? I think it's a close. That's why I think they went overtime. So I think they played 10 times. I can't say Central wins 10 out of 10. I don't even know if they win over half of them, right? I'm not sure you can put us in that mix because, again, we didn't deserve it this year. But in the 21 season, and that's the season that we're talking about when you're saying self-proclaimed champions, we lost by 1 point in the very first game of the season. After that, we beat everybody else, most of them in convincing fashion, and the team that ended up winning the championship, we beat in convincing fashion. And so, again, they deserve the right to claim Celebration Bowl champions, which they did. And a poll determined that because of that Celebration Bowl win, that they were the best team in black college football. Another poll said that Jackson, because of what they had accomplished the entire season, going undefeated in conference and then losing in the championship game, they still felt that they were the best team. So they voted them the number 1 team. Another poll, ESPN, said that based on the total body of work from everything that was done during the season, the fact that FAMU lost a game by 1 point in week 1 and won the rest of their games and got to the playoffs, they're the best team. Then we had 3 different champions. And again, I don't see how people can dispute that because, again, up until the college football playoff some years back, the national champion was determined by polls and by voters. And so you have to give credence to those voters because they're the ones that are charged with judging, evaluating college football. And that's what they saw. So it wasn't one person. If this was just one person's opinion, then you could be like, oh, that's just one person. They went to FAM or they went to Jackson or South Carolina State, so they're biased. No, this is a group, a body of voters who made that determination based off the evidence that they have in front of them.
The evidence that they have, which most likely are box scores and film, not actually watching every team and scrutinizing every game play by play. They do an overall summary. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that statement. And so once again, let's say you and I, hey man, I think Bam look good. Well, I think they look good too. You know, and although we're not supposed to discuss who we vote for, you know we discuss who we vote for. Well, I think we're going to do this and I think we're going to do that. But I'm going to leave that for right there for right now because I know we're pressed for time. Why do we, and I'm talking about HBCU conference, take offense to not being invited to an at-large bid for FCS playoffs when we gave up our automatic bid?
I think we take offense because, yes, you're right. We did waive our automatic qualifier. Okay, we had our rationale for doing so. The SWAC for years placed the Bayou Classic and the Turkey Day Classic and the SWAC championship game over the playoffs. That was a decision that the conference made, I think, back in the early 2000s, even the late 90s. The MEAC, once they got together and conceptualized the Celebration Bowl, made that determination, I think, in 2015 or something like that. And so because there's a huge financial gain to playing a championship game for the SWAC and then the Celebration Bowl for the MEAC and the SWAC, in order to do that, we had to give up our automatic qualifier. Now, that's all we did. We didn't say we don't want to participate in the playoffs. We said we're just giving up the automatic qualifier. They're still at-large bids. There are 11 automatic qualifying bids. There are 13 at-large bids. And so because of that, we're saying if we have a team within our respective conferences, the MEAC or the SWAC, who is eligible and who qualifies, they deserve a right to be in playoffs. That's what we're saying. And last year, we felt we had a strong enough case to do so. We got in. This year, we felt we had a strong enough case. We didn't get in. And so for us, I mean, and it wasn't just Rattler Nation that was upset about it. I think for the most part, the masses throughout Black college football were upset about it because there were teams that were allowed in who finished in the middle of their respective conferences with 4 conference losses. And so we're talking about equality, we're talking about inclusion. It doesn't look like that's a goal, which apparently it's not, based on the words of the selection committee. They're not, in our opinion, interested in including a team from the MEAC nor the SWAC. Again, the conference champions won't go because they're going to the Celebration Bowl. But if there's a team that's worthy, I don't know if they're interested in bringing those teams in as well. And that's, to me, that's problematic because we still qualify. There are teams from the conference that still qualify. And if they qualify and they're eligible, I think that they should be allowed in.
Well, and with that being said, yes, it's an at-large bid. And in most cases, it would be our number 3 and sometimes even number 14 that would get that at-large invite. Okay, and
no, it'll be number 2. Most of the time, it'll be number 2. It will have to be number
1 and 2. When the number 1 and number 2 teams play in the SWAC championship.
But they're not, and that's what we talked about earlier. The number 1 and 2 team aren't playing the SWAC. The one team for the East and the number 1 team for the West are playing. The second best team in the SWAC, without question, the last 2 years has been FAMU. I don't think anybody would question that. Anybody with their right mind would question that, right? So we've been the second best team, and because we're in the same division with the number 1 team, we don't go. Again, you look at, and I'm looking at precedent, college football playoffs. There are 2 teams from the Big Ten in the college football playoff, right, this year.
Yes, sir.
Michigan, Ohio State. They're in the same division.
Yes,
They're in the same division. One of those teams did not play for a Big Ten championship, which means that a team that's not a conference champion, that didn't even play in a conference championship game, is in the college football playoff as one of the top 4 teams in America. Why is that? Because they're looking at the body of work. They're not giving precedent to
not only are they looking at the body of work, but they're also looking at dollar signs. Because
But no, because you let Alabama in, it's going to drive revenue. If you let Notre Dame in, I mean, there are a ton of teams, USC, there are a ton of teams that will drive revenue. The college football playoff's mission, at least from what we're being told, is to identify the 4 best teams in America and give those 4 teams a chance to play for a national championship. So since the conception of the college football playoffs, there have been multiple occasions where a non-conference champion is one of those 4 teams. Now, the SWAC doesn't subscribe to that same philosophy because precedent is given to divisions. In college football playoffs, by the time they determine the 4 best teams in America, they don't care about division, they don't care about conference, they don't even care about championships. Who are the 4 best teams in America? This year, they determined that Ohio State was one of the 4 best teams, even though they lost to Michigan in the last game of the season. They did not go to the conference championship game. So Ohio State they're not undefeated. They're not even divisional champs, let alone conference champs. But they get a chance to play for a national championship. That's what I'm saying. So to me, they're saying if you're going to have a quote-unquote championship game format, you want to give the best teams a chance to win a championship. It's not that everybody gets a trophy generation. Well, it is, but in this case, it shouldn't be.
Yes, it is. I was going to say, yes, it is.
But again, the college football playoff case is not. They're saying we don't care if the Pac-12 doesn't have a representative. We don't care. We don't care if. So in this case, only 3 conferences are represented. In a 14 playoff, there's 5 Power 5 conferences. There are only 3 conferences represented in the playoffs: the SEC, the Big 12, and the Big 10. The ACC didn't have a representative, nor does the Pac-12 have a representative. But college football playoffs say we don't care about that because it's not about trying to and playing devil's advocate. And I guess I'm, spending my own faith. That's what the FCS playoff committee says as well. They said the same thing. They're not concerned about trying to get everybody in. They're saying they want to determine who are the 24 best teams in the, well, I guess 13 best at-large teams, because some of those teams get automatic qualifiers based off their winning their conference. So they're saying they're going to pick the quote-unquote 13 best available teams. This year they felt we weren't one of the 13 best teams. Now, we feel we were, just like I'm sure that their teams out of the Pac-12 feel that they were. I'm sure that Clemson feels that they are, right? That they should have a chance to go because they won the ACC and, and all those things. I'm sure Alabama feels that they are. They should have a chance to go. And so, again, everybody's on it. Whoever that 15 left out of a 14 playoff, whoever that third team left out of a championship game format, or whoever that, 14th team left out of an at-large conversation is going to always feel that way. And so, again, but again, I think we're justified in feeling that way because on paper, FAMU has 2 conference losses in the last 2 seasons. Both those losses have been to the team that has not lost a conference game. Both those years, they've gone on to go undefeated outside of that game, and in this year in particular, beat the team that got to go to the championship game in the other division. The year before, beat the team that got to win the championship, that won the whole thing.
There's just a pause, just for a second. And I hear all of that, 1,000%. But rather than to give up your birthright, that might sound like a strong term, could you not hold on to that security piece? And the conference says, okay, we got our number 1 and 2 or whatever from our division, but here's who's going to represent us in the playoff. And that could be the case of the FAMU. Could we not have gone that route?
I'm not sure if the powers that be would have allowed that. Because, again, the conference, the automatic qualifier is the conference champion. So that's just the way. Champion,
by the way the bylaws are written by the NCAA and or the conferences. But if that conference, in this case the Southwestern Athletic Conference, will say, our conference champion or conference representative would be the number one runner-up opposed to the way we're already structured.
I mean, we could obviously propose it, but I don't think the powers that be would let that fly, because that would kind of be like, I guess those have not take it either too.
Okay, and I guess that's what I'm saying, because it would take hell and high water to try to get that automatic bid back right now, because we
couldn't get it. We couldn't get it with the Celebration Bowl. It's impossible to get it. Yeah.
Right. Well, I was going to say with the Celebration Bowl, with the Value Classic, that's not going to happen.
Right.
So
no, it's not.
And inadvertently, we put ourselves in this predicament.
No. Again, I totally understand, and that was the risk that we ran. Obviously, when we made the decision to remove our automatic qualifier years ago, and so yeah, and there are those out there that believe that the MEAC and the SWAC should participate in the FCS playoffs. And I understand their sentiment and believing so. There are also those out there that understand the benefit to the Celebration Bowl. I mean, right now we're talking dollars and cents. And so from a financial perspective.
In that same voice, in that same sentiment, there could be an adjustment to that. If we went and lined up with the FCS, all we got to do, whoever is dishing out TV deals, because there's no secret that we're underpaid for our TV deals. If they boost up our TV deals, we wouldn't have to play a Celebration Bowl. We wouldn't have to play these SWAC championship games, and we can go right on into the FCS tournament.
No, I mean, yeah, I definitely agree with that. And so there are a lot of moving parts, obviously, and we definitely we do this a bunch, and we have great dialogue and bringing up a lot of points. But there are a lot of dynamics to obviously the long-term, short-term, and long-term goals of the SWAC and the MEAC, and what that looks like for each member institution. And so there's no one-size-fits-all. Again, you can't have the Celebration Bowl and the FCS playoffs. It's either or. And I think we've greatly benefited from the Celebration Bowl. I truly believe it. We've been able to get distribution that many conferences don't get at the FCS level, and I think that's going to continue. I think the TV deal is up for negotiation here pretty soon, and based off the numbers and the success of it, I think we'll be able to bring more to the table, as far as potential payouts.
If we're able to bring more to the table because of the uniqueness of the brand, because of our situation, we could rewrite a whole bunch of things, and you can have your cake and eat it too, as we referred to. But I know that I'm pressed for time. You're pressed for time. We're going to have to continue this. Right? We're going to have to continue this.
No question.
I want to give you some closing thoughts and comments, brother, as we get ready to wrap this up.
Well, obviously we've talked about a lot, and we kind of get going if we get time. But no, it's just always great to be able to just have dialogue, and like you said in the beginning, to even agree to disagree. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from what we're able to do, and why I think we worked so well together for so long. And if more of us can adopt that attitude or that persona, I think we'd be much better off. It's not always about us agreeing on a topic. It's just about being open-minded and about us, hearing the other person's viewpoint and understanding that, hey, there's validity in that too. And that comes from a genuine place most of the time. And so, for us, I think as we move forward, into 2023, and as we continue to try to push our program forward, push our conference forward, that it's going to take a lot of that. It's going to take a lot of tough discussions. It's going to take a lot of open and honest dialogue to figure out what's best. And obviously, ultimately, that's up to Dr. Charles McClellan and the chancellors and presidents to decide which direction we move in. But I think as fans, as enthusiasts, that we can voice our opinions and we can go into the chats and have that type of open dialogue without, taking shots. And I know we enjoy it a lot of times. Roughing the SWAC is probably one of the most tapped into websites out there, but outside of just back and forth banter, I do think when it's time to have the serious discussions, then we have to be a lot more open-minded, So hopefully people hear us go back and forth and understand that there's a mutual love and respect there that's existed since my days at Prairie View. And that will always exist, even though you call them out my name today, and I'm going to let that slide.
Oh, man. Oh, man.
Sometimes we bring it out each other, but yeah,
you started.
Just know you have to edit that part out.
Oh, man. My mind be gone sometimes, man. I had somebody, I got to talking about Prairie View getting Caleb Johnson from Valley, and I kept calling the kid Caleb Jones. And his name is Johnson. And all I could do is say, oops. But you're talking to my head, not to my heart, right?
I ain't no doubt. Well, you are from St. Louis, so sometimes that's St. Louis will come out, and we understand that. So, but no, man, it's all in love. I enjoy every chance we get to have these type of talks, and look forward to the next one. But Merry Christmas, brother, Happy New Year to everyone listening, and let's continue to move this conference forward, man. I just think it's the best conference in America, and can't wait to see what the future holds.
Yes, sir. He is Shotgun Willie Simmons of the FAMU Rattlers. I am the radio guy, Dr. Mike Prince. Hey, what you see is what you get when it comes to us. It's a mutual love, mutual respect, and we're not going to change that nor put on a phony face to go after anyone. And they say take it or leave it, but we do appreciate you guys joining in. Don't forget, follow me on Twitter at The Mike Prince Show. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at the Open Mic Broadcast Network. Visit our website at obnradio.com. And if you have one of those smart devices, all you got to do is say, hey, play the latest episode of The Mike Prince Show, and you'll have everything that you need. I'm going to take the stage left for right now. I am the radio guy, Dr. Mike Prince. And until next time, you guys be blessed. We'll see you on the other side.